I have a bit of a cold, but we'll see how long I can keep going. It's, let's see, our first viewer says, I remarried and my wife's daughter is very cruel to my children. This girl's had a hard life, so I try to be loving, but she's a real handful. I'm angry with her for the way she treats my kids. I find it difficult to forgive her. I don't even want her to be around. So, first, your resentment of her. There's no way that she could miss you're feeling resentful. And if she feels your resentment, she's going to take out her increased emptiness because she feels your resentment. She's going to take it out on whoever's around, which is, surprise, your kids. So it's not like you started this, but you're the adult. So who gets to change? You. By your resenting the way she treats your kids, you are actually making it worse, because it's a guarantee that she's taking out her frustration on your children. And it's obvious that the kid is incapable of loving. It's not like she has a store of real love and decides she's not going to share it. So if you got that, you would understand that your resentment comes not from the way she behaves, but from her failing to fulfill your expectations that she'd be loving towards your kids. So again, we're back to you. Expecting a child, now you didn't say how old she is, but expecting your wife's child to be the more loving person here is kind of nuts. You're the daddy here, and you're going to be the one that the family relies on to love both your children and to love your wife's child. Kind of like being, you're being angry at her is kind of like being angry at a retarded person because they can't do calculus. Well, they can't. No sense being mad at them for something they can't do, and your stepdaughter can't do it either. So first you realize intellectually that she can't, and that your being resentful is a huge part of the problem. And then the next step would be for you to find more love, which would involve you getting on conference calls, you getting a coach, you whatever, and telling the truth about you, instead of saying, I'm so mad that my stepdaughter behaves this way. The truth about you would be, I'm being unloving to her. In fact, how is your being unloving to her any different from her being unloving to your kids? What's the difference? Same thing. In fact, you're really more culpable because of you having the additional experience in years. So that intellectual realization is big. You're telling the truth to people who can love you, big. But it won't change all of a sudden. So what can you do in the meantime? Every single time, you can't have disharmony in a home. It's like allowing poison. How much rat poison would you allow to be added to dinner? Hopefully none. How much dog poop would you allow to sit unattended in your living room carpet? Hopefully none. The idea is that some things are just not permissible, and unloving behavior is a cancer. So you don't do this. You don't say to her, I will not permit that kind of behavior in my house. That's crazy. That'll never work. That's like telling somebody they can't drown. Or can't splash anybody while they're drowning. But you can talk to your stepdaughter every single time she treats your children badly. And that's what you need to do. Now, it won't do any good to do that if you are feeling unloving when you do it. But what you can do is, let's say that your stepdaughter says something unkind to your son. You immediately say, to the stepdaughter, who we'll assume is Drusilla, since there's another famous stepdaughter named Drusilla. And you say, so, Drusilla, what is it that you're trying, what is it that you're saying to Fred, your son? And she'll mumble something like, blah, 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 because they never know what you're talking about. And so you say, well, I was just observing you, and you were speaking to Fred in a really unkind, angry tone of voice, and you used these words. So what were you really trying to say? Now, again, she won't know. And so you're going to have to help her. So what you're really saying to Fred is, whenever you inconvenience me, whenever I can't control you, whenever I can't be your boss, your prison warden, your overseer, then I get annoyed that I can't control you. So really, I'm angry because I'm a controlling, angry person. That's the truth. And you help her see what her behavior means. Now, the first few times, she's going to be kind of puzzled by your behavior, which is why you have to keep it up with utter consistency. And as you do that, she will either change her behavior for the right reasons, in other words, just to become more loving, or she'll simply avoid that child so that you don't ever talk to her about her behavior. Either way, you win. But to allow unkind behavior to go on in our homes without saying something about it is awful, deadly. I would also suggest that you read the parenting book with your wife, and if possible, agree on the steps that you take toward talking to your stepdaughter when she's being unkind. If your wife won't participate in it, no problem, you still can. Just don't let it go. I was talking to a number of people today, and it struck me as I was talking that often in the course of the conversation, people spend so much time worrying about the past and fretting about the past and worrying about the future. It occurred to me that, we occupy our lives with the past and the future. As we think about the past, really the feelings that most commonly come from agonizing over the past are regret and anger, guilt. And the feelings that we have as we contemplate the future, the most common negative feelings are, the most common negative feeling is fear. So, what good does it do for us to wallow in regret, guilt, anger, fear? We can't do anything about the past or the future. But we do have now. And so my suggestion is to those of us who make real love calls, especially to those who receive them, is to remember that the most important purpose of any real love call is that the other person feel loved in that moment. Sometimes I actually have to keep directing people back to the central focus. And they'll say, well, what if I can't do anything about what if? Can't do anything about tomorrow. Can't do anything about next year. All I can do is love you now. Can you feel that? Until somebody can feel love in the present, there's no sense talking about the steps that we're going to take tomorrow. Is there? Because if you don't feel loved now, what do you think is going to happen tomorrow? You're going to repeat the same old behaviors you always have. So the only change we can really ever make in somebody's life are the changes that we make in now. And I just suggest that as something to think about as we make our calls. Here's a viewer who says, my wife and I disagree on teaching our children lessons by natural consequences. I find this very difficult to accept in her. Our son goes to bed late and has trouble waking up on his own in the morning. I say that if he hasn't awakened by a set time to get ready and do his chores, then he needs to find his own way to school. He can get a cab. She would prefer to wake him up with all the fussing that goes around that, and then deal with his, out of sort mood because he was up late, and then help him with the things that he needs to do before he leaves on time. So the first thing I would suggest to you is that you must unconditionally love your wife and not be impatient with her as she does what she's doing with your son. Then as she can feel unconditionally accepted by you, then there might be, and I'm not saying that it's a certainty, but there might be a possibility that she could listen to you as you attempt to share with her principles that are important. In other words, as you teach her. So first the love and then the teaching. If she's rescuing this kid, she is hurting him. It's not just neutral, it's hurting. Here's this kid who's, as I remember, 12 or 13 or something. If you're having to get up at 12, if you're having to wake up a 12 or 13-year-old kid to get ready for school and help him with his chores, then you, the parent, are stupid. It makes no sense. The kid is 2/3 of his way out the door, on his way to college or independent living or whatever, and he can't get up out of bed. If you'd like, I'll send you a long list of parents who did exactly what your wife is doing, and who babied their kid and did everything for them and never wanted the child to experience a moment of discomfort. Heaven forbid a child would experience discomfort. And so then those parents babied the kid, got him up, took him to school. When they forgot their homework, they'd take the homework to school. And I can tell you what happened to those kids. Most of those kids in their 30s and 40s are still living at home. Why wouldn't they? If their mothers are going to continue to diaper them from age 2 to 18, why would you want to leave that? Why would you leave a place where you just lie in your bed and you get fed and clothed and taken care of and babied? And you know, it may sound like I'm making fun of parents who do this with their kids. I am. Because we're crippling these kids. We're destroying them. I'm not exaggerating. And the whole reason we're doing it is not for the benefit of the kids. So and I suggest you ask this to your wife, do you see the effect this is having on little Fred? Well, no. Then you're going to have to tell her. What is the principle that we're teaching the child? Our entire role as parents is to love them and teach them to prepare them to be independent. So if you're taking care of and getting this child up and fixing his lunch and doing his chores so he can get out the door, what lesson is he learning? Really, I'm asking you, what is the lesson he's learning? And she'll go, well, I don't like it when you talk to me like this. Victims really hate it when you talk to them straight, but they also never have a better solution. Victims simply disapprove of everything that everybody else does. So what lesson is being taught to the kid? The kid is being taught that he doesn't have to do anything, and that he can choose whatever he wants, like staying up late, and then you will pay the consequences. Well, good luck with this, because then when the kid gets to be like out of high school age, he will continue to make exactly that kind of choices. He'll choose, for example, not to go to school, college, trade school, whatever, it doesn't matter what, or choose not to get a job. And then he'll just stay at home and go, well, baby me and take care of me like you always have. And why wouldn't a child come to that conclusion? If we've done it for 18 years, why would it suddenly stop when high school finished? So it's really important that she sees that she's actually destroying her son. As I said, I'll give you a long list of parents who can bear testimony to this. And all of this fussing stresses her. She doesn't like it. She runs around like a chicken with her head off and fusses and fumes, and it detracts from her ability to feel loved and happy and to participate fully in your marriage. So it's not only hurting the kid, it's hurting the entire family. And she's doing it not to help him. She's doing it to help herself. So it's just bad in every imaginable way. And yet I realize it's a difficult thing to give up. I get that. This viewer says, today I was talking with a person on campus and they said that relationships had to be hard with fights and struggles. I didn't know that. I'll have to call this person and learn the better way. I'm teasing you now. I've read Greg's book and I don't think that relationships have to be. I once thought this was true. Are there any examples of metaphors that can portray this to a person in a short amount of time? Sure. In order to become physically strong, is it necessary to work out? Well, absolutely. And working out requires some effort. In fact, even some effort to the point where it's uncomfortable. Developing relationships is very similar. So, yes, there would have to be some moments of discomfort, of faith, of stepping out into the unknown, of practicing with your partner something you haven't done before, which is uncomfortable. So, some moments of discomfort, sure. But in the process of becoming stronger, is it necessary that we break our bones? No. Is it necessary that we gash ourselves open and experience wounds? No. And so relationships don't need trauma. There do not have to be fights, struggles, sure, disagreements, absolutely. Learning to work with things that we've never encountered before, yeah. But fighting? Who benefits from anger? Who benefits from the message of "I don't love you," which is uniformly expressed in anger? So, necessary? No. Do they sometimes happen? Of course. And then if we take complete responsibility for the conflicts, well then we learn from them rather than becoming enmeshed in them. Here's a viewer who says, I just had another go-around with a woman that I work with. We'll call her Susie. How convenient for me, since that's the only name I can remember. I'll cut to the chase and leave out most of the details. My former mother-in-law has late-stage Alzheimer's. In the couple of months that she went from being at home with some help, some incontinence, but still mobile, coherent when she kept the medication patch on, to now where she is bedridden, totally confused, and completely incontinent. She's had some problems eating solids, which we thought was because of her dentures. But now we realize it was probably more than that. It was due to other motor problems. And as of last week, she lost the ability to swallow anything. My ex-husband, Fred, had to take her back to the hospital. They wanted to insert a feeding tube, and he and his brother have said no to that. Now, back to Susie. This is the coworker. After I said that I agreed with the no feeding tube decision, she went into a tirade about how we were cruel and that was just the easy way out for us. Suppose someone tried to starve you to death. How would you like it? She said. It was terrible. She said they suffer because they're thirsty and hungry and so on. And I listened longer than I should have. I tried to say that she was entitled to an opinion, and so were we. But that didn't go over well since our opinion was wrong. Then I got angry and told her that she couldn't make pronouncements like they were written on stone tablets and delivered from the mount. I finally just said enough, I'm done, and I walked away. So why do I even talk to Susie about anything other than work-related issues? I'm not feeling particularly loving toward her. Yeah, I know, she's empty, so am I. And I'm really sad about my mother-in-law. So you've got two different issues going on here. One, Susie, the lady at work, and also the mother-in-law. So first let's do Susie, flip a coin. So it's really tempting to share our personal lives with the people at work. After all, as we share personal things, that has the potential of creating intimacy, closeness between ourselves and the people at work. And goodness knows we like to, form friendships and be liked everywhere we go. And so it's tempting to do that. But the idea of talking about personal stuff to people is to do it with people who have the capacity to love you. So if we talk about personal stuff with people who are not capable of loving us, we just as well hand them a bat and say, do you have the time to hit me in the head? And we do that kind of thing all the time. I mean, I can bet you, no doubt in my mind, that Susie has given you 100 different indications that she's not capable of being unconditionally loving. And yet, you found yourself wanting to win her approval, and so you told her this story. So, not real clever on your part. Tell the truth about your personal life to people who can love you. Now, what do you do when you're in an interaction like that? You've already screwed it up, you made a mistake, and you've told the truth to this lady, and then she starts in on you, telling you her opinion, as she did here. Stop it sooner. Our big mistake is that we're afraid to hurt people's feelings, and so we let them get revved up. It's much easier to stop somebody after 2 steps than it is to stop somebody who's had 100 steps and they're now running at full speed. So stop them early. She said, well, now I just don't agree with that. And you say, well, thank you. I appreciate your opinion. And then she goes on to tell you why she doesn't agree with it. No. You let her go. I would let her say one sentence. Well, I don't agree with that. I would listen to that and say, well, I appreciate you giving me your opinion. And I don't agree with that because, and I would put my hand up and I would say, so listen really carefully to me here. I appreciate you telling me your opinion. I understand it. I've noted it. I won't forget it. But I don't need to hear it again. And I don't need to hear it explained in great detail. Well, you don't have to talk to me like that, because that's probably what she'd do. And you just go, I've got it. Is there anything else that you want to talk about? Because I will not talk about this subject. Well, you just have to. And then what you do is you say, I appreciate it, and you turn back to what you were doing. You stop it right from the beginning, because we feel like we're obligated to listen when people speak. No, she intruded on your conversation and decided to take it over. And you don't have to allow that. She can continue to say all that she wants to, but you don't have to be there when she does it. So you can go somewhere else. Go to another office. You can tell her that you're busy. You don't have the time to talk to her if she's in your office. Whatever. But stop it. We've been taught that we're obligated to hear people, and it's a big mistake. This viewer, oh, hang on, before we get to that, I'm going to finish the second part of it, because you talked about Susie and then you talked about your mother-in-law. You said it's been awful watching somebody I know and care about deteriorate to a helpless child, but she's not a child and she's not getting better. Alzheimer's is fatal, certainly in her case. It's just a matter of when. My ex-husband has power of attorney, and I assume that there's a living will. Even so, I know he's having a rough time knowing what's best to do. You're in a very difficult situation, a situation that really few people get to experience, and even then, usually only once or twice in their lifetime. So, there's not a nice little formula about how to do this, not like a little pattern we get to practice. It comes up once, and we make the best decisions we can, and then the opportunity's gone. It might help to, and it might, I'm not telling you how to see this, it might help to realize that, in your own words, she's already gone. Who she really is, who she's really been all of her life, is already gone, and you're having a hard time accepting that. Most people do. It can be very helpful to begin grieving now for her death. She's dead. Her lungs are still moving and her heart still beats, but she's not there. And when you can accept that, when you can grieve that, it becomes much easier to just make what are now medical and business decisions about her death. Give her a feeding tube. Again, I'm trying to tell you what to do. I'm just saying, give her a feeding tube for what? The reason to feed people is to maintain their health. It's to restore them to health, to help them heal. What would you be doing here? You'd be feeding her just to prolong the life, not her life, but the life of her body when she's already gone. Now, that's different from killing somebody. I mean, if somebody got old, I wouldn't pull out a gun and blast them in their hospital bed. Turns out there are actually laws against that. But I certainly am not obligated to go to extraordinary lengths to keep her alive. And since you can't feed her a sandwich and have her eat it, anything past that, sticking tubes down her throat and hooking her up to machines, becomes artificial. And to what end? So, do I know what's right? Nah. And wouldn't criticize what you're doing. But you do have to make these decisions, and they're only yours. So the opinion of anybody else, especially when they come along and tell you that you're wrong, oh, they can just pretty much shut up, because it's none of their business. And as we said before, if they insist on their opinion, let them have it, but let them have it by themselves. Here's a viewer who says, my 13-year-old son has always made good choices. Recently, his choices have become not so good. Between the ages of 13 and 14, boys seem to be poisoned in that way. His grades are dropping, his friends are changing, and he's not on good terms with his principal for the first time. I know some of this is age-related, and we've had several crossroad talks about choices that he is or will be facing. I want to help him through this, love him through this, let him make some mistakes, but I'm afraid of where he's headed. How can I apply real love to being there for him? So when a kid makes a mistake at this age, our tendency is to say, you made a wrong choice, you made a mistake. They pretty much already know that. So it's much more effective to say to them, so let's talk about what you did. For example, mouthing off to the teacher in class, which tends to get you on the bad side of the principal, as you say here. So describe what you were doing there. He won't know what you're talking about, so you'll have to help him. People only behave badly toward other people when they're trying to get something from them. So in this case, when you're mouthing off to the teacher, describe what was going on. And you'll discover that in some way, either because of what the teacher was doing or not doing, or just because of, like you say, age-related changes, he was feeling out of sorts, edgy, irritated, helpless. And when you mouth off to the teacher, you get a feeling of power. And so you say, I get it. I get why you would do it, or whatever crime it was. Makes perfect sense, because it does briefly get you the attention of the other kids. They look at you like you're very cool. You feel like you had control over an adult. I get it. What would the long-term effects of that be? And of course, they almost uniformly say, well, I don't know. And so you help them see. If you keep it up, I'm not going to stop you. I can't. You're actually too old for me to stop your behavior. But if you continue to mouth off to people and speak to them disrespectfully, how will they then treat you? If you treat her badly, she will treat you badly. Your grades will suffer, your recommendations will suffer, you're going to find it harder in school, she'll pick on you more, and you'll discover that that's going to be true not only with this teacher, but with the next one, and the next one, and then the principal, and then with policemen, and then you're in prison, and then, they pretty much don't care if you mouth off in prison, because, the other prisoners will just beat you up. And you say it just as matter-of-factly as that. The more you display these acting up behaviors, the more isolated you become. And then you find yourself shoved off to the side and in the company of other kids who are using these behaviors. And then they'll actually give you a sense of approval for using them. You just need to know where that goes. And if you want to go down that road, you can, but eventually you'll get far enough down that road where nobody can help you. So I'm just going to talk to you about it each time there's a behavior like this. We don't need to beat our kids up. We think that we need to make a great big dramatic deal out of it every time a kid screws up. We don't. So like when one of my kids did something illegal and the police called me and said, do you have a son named the kid's name? And I said, no. No. I admitted that he was my son, and so he asked what had gone on, and he described it, and I said, well, what do you want to do? Do you want to put him in jail, or do you want me to come pick him up? They wanted me to come pick him up, so when he got home, I just asked him what he learned. What did you learn from this? How did it go for you? How did you feel? Did you feel happy and contented, peaceful and loving, or was it frightening? Was it just simply exciting to break the law? We just talked about the nature of what he had done. And as a result of just talking about it, and loving him while he was screwing up, he was much better prepared to give up that behavior. It didn't have the same allure as it does when you tell a child, now, I don't want to see you climbing that fence into the neighbor's yard. Try that sometime with your kid. Within a couple of days, the kid will be over the fence. It's like with a group of little kids bringing in a bowl of beans and setting it in the middle of a room full of 6-year-olds and saying, now, I don't want any of you to stick these beans up your nose. Man, you just as well stick the beans up their nose yourself. Often in the act of telling our children emphatically not to do a thing, we're really just daring them to do it. So kids need to be loved and taught, not beaten. Here's a viewer who says, I have a question that nags me. You say that addicts take drugs because they feel unloved. It seems to me that young people become addicts because they experiment with drugs. And in some instances, the drugs that they experiment with are highly addictive. So before they realize what has happened through their experimentation, fun-seeking, thrill-seeking, they've developed a physical or mental dependency on a drug. That's actually a reasonably popular explanation. But you shot right by the important parts. You said that they're just experimenting with drugs, and then before they know it, they're addicted. You know, I've now had conversations with, easily 1,000 addicts. Who knows how many more than that, but easily that. Actually, that's way underestimating. Why do addicts use in the first place? Why do they experiment in the first place? I haven't come across one addict, not one, who said, I was feeling loved and happy and whole and complete and loving, but I was sitting there one day and I went, I wonder what it's like to use cocaine. I just gotta know. And who got up in this state of completion and rushed off to find a cocaine dealer so that he could, in your words, experiment with drugs. The entire notion is silly. The whole reason that kids experiment in the first place, even when it's just mildly, is to dull some pain or fill some need. So they don't feel accepted at home. They're out with their friends and their friends say, here, come on, take a hit of this. Even then, what are they responding to? A need to feel accepted by their peers. We have a tendency to mislabel this particular situation as peer pressure. Oh man, the pressure exerted by the friends is minimal. It turns out it's actually a dying compulsion on the part of the kid who uses to please his friends. Kids are actually eager to please each other. Their friends don't have to push them to do it, so there's really not so much pressure as everybody kind of implies. So they're dulling a pain. They're dulling a pain in the beginning when they experiment. They're continuing to alleviate their pain when they use it repeatedly. And then, you're right, and then, after they've done that, but still all in response to pain, then they do get addicted. And now, after a while, it's not even so much to dull an emotional pain, it's just to satisfy a physical craving. They can't stop now. So, yeah, we do get into addiction, but it starts off with pain. Now, is it possible that somebody who was happy could experiment just for fun? I suppose, statistically possible. I've just never met somebody like that, and I have a fair bit of experience with addicts. So if there's somebody out there who's done it, I believe it. I wouldn't fight it, but I just haven't seen it. It would certainly be so rare as to be not even really worth talking about. Here's a viewer who says, I went to visit my sister this past weekend, who is separated from her husband, although now they're dating. I don't know why that word always strikes me as humorous when people are already married. Her one daughter is headed for jail, keeps running away, stealing money from my sister, and lying. The other daughter is lying, not doing well in school, drinking, and who knows what else. After I left, my sister called asking me for advice, not knowing what to do. My sister is never home, so these girls are left to fend for themselves. My sister had to leave work to pick up the one daughter as the school can no longer contend with her. Goodness. When things are this bad, where do you start? My sister and nieces are a mess. Oh, well, when things are this bad, usually, telling people to read the parenting book and so on is way too late for that. So I would recommend that you get a good coach. Go on the website, you can look up coaches, and get a coach who is willing to coach the mother through this process of reconciling with her husband and working with her kids. By the time things get to this kind of messiness, just going to an occasional conference call is just too slow. These kids need a lot of work. The mom needs to feel loved. The mom needs to know how to be loving to her husband. The mom needs to know how to love the kids. This is a lot of work. So I would suggest doing it soon. Now, I'm amazed at families when the family's all breaking up. Like you said, these two are just about to divorce. The kids are already getting in trouble with the law, can't stay in school, and you tell people, we'll go get a coach. We can't afford a coach. Really? Huh. Then sell a car. Do whatever it takes. Sell a car and take the bus. We're talking about the lives of your family. I had a family come here once to get coaching for 3 days, and that's what they did. They sold a car so that they could come because they decided that getting real love in their lives was the single most important thing that they could do. And until people are willing to make whatever sacrifice it takes to find happiness, they won't. They would like it just to be convenient. They're willing to pay $1.95 for it, but no more. Well, then live with the disaster. Getting a real love coach is cheaper than all the alternatives. It's cheaper than divorce. It's cheaper than bailing a kid out of prison. It's cheaper than the car accidents, drug addiction, and pregnancies that the kids are going to experience. So when people say, well, I can't afford it, I don't believe you. I really don't. So you can get a coach. You can come to a real love intervention here in Rome. I'm not attached to what anybody does. I'm just saying there are a lot of things you can do, and worth it? Yeah. People say, I would do anything for my kids. I hear that expression all the time. And I say, all right, well then bring them here. Well, we don't have the time for, so you'll do everything for your kids except what works. Is that what I'm hearing you say? It's really kind of silly to say you do anything for your kids. Here's a viewer who says, my husband completely lost his composure in front of the kids the other night. Poor language, angry, even went so far as to call my 7-year-old stupid. I want to know the most loving thing to do for my husband and my son. My husband does not want to talk about it once it's over. Oh, well, again, we're to what I was just talking about a little bit ago. We say, I'm willing to do anything for my kids, but then we finish it with, except that, that, and that, and that. We name all the things that would actually work. So, literally, excuse me, your children's emotional lives are at stake here. Are you willing to do whatever it takes? So I suggest you get a coach, because I'll give you an answer as to some things that you could do here, but just from the answer that I give you, you'll not be able to do it. It's too difficult. Be like when I learned tennis, me just going online and watching them play. Well, okay, I can see that how it's done, but that doesn't translate easily into my behaving differently. Same with you. So are you willing to do whatever it takes? Then the instant, again, referring to something that I talked about earlier, the instant you see your husband begin to ramp it up and start getting angry, you don't wait till he's screaming and cursing and calling kids stupid. As soon as you can see a conflict start to build, you reach out and you touch him and you say, could I see you for just a second? Now, you don't correct him in front of the kids. That just works badly every time. But you can say, I need to talk to you about something. In the garage, wherever. Be even better to talk to him in the middle of the highway. Anything to get him away from the kids. And then you say, it's not going very well in there, and the kids are being hurt. So can we talk about how we can do this differently? Now, that's one thing you can do. That's just one. I can think of a dozen off the top of my head. Another one would be that, after the interaction, you say to him, the way that your interaction just went with the kids, there was a lot of unhappiness. And it's hurting the kids in ways that I don't think either of us can imagine. So we need to talk about how we can do that differently. And if he says, well, I just don't want to talk about it, you say, I know you don't, but we have to. Well, I just don't want to. Well, I'm going to. Because our children's lives are at stake. I'm amazed when one parent says, well, there's nothing I can do because my husband, yeah, there's something you can do. You can tell him that every time there's an interaction like that, you will talk about it. Not angrily, but you will do it. If one of your children had cancer and was going to die, and your husband said, well, I just don't believe in them doctors. What would you do? Let your child die because you didn't want to offend your husband? No, I don't think you would. If you would, then you need some work. You would say, well, I'm going to take the child to the doctor. So you cannot support me. You can lie down in front of the car. I will back the car over you. But I'm going to take this child to the doctor. Same thing here. Your children need help just as much as if they had cancer. So you have to do whatever it takes. Again, it's probably not likely you'll be able to do this by yourself. So I would suggest getting a coach to help you through it. It's way too important to ignore. So I think we've gotten through the questions that I have. Been delightful being with you. Look forward to seeing you a week from tonight. Hopefully I won't have a cold then. So we'll see you next Tuesday. In between now and then, it's always about real love. Good night.